I never thought a phone call from my sister would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Linda called to tell me that Aunt Margaret had passed away. My hands were covered in flour. I'd been making David's favorite blueberry muffins, just like I had every Tuesday morning for the past 38 years of our marriage. The news hit me hard. Aunt Margaret had been more than family. She'd been my confidant, the one person who truly understood me. What I didn't expect was the second call, 3 days after the funeral. Mrs. Patricia Morrison? The lawyer's voice was formal but kind. Yes, this is she. I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret Eleanor Thompson. You're named as the sole beneficiary of her assets, which total approximately $42 million. The wooden spoon I'd been holding clattered to the floor. $42 million. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the wallpaper I'd picked out 17 years ago, the one David said was too expensive, but I'd saved up for anyway by clipping coupons and skipping lunches. Aunt Margaret had never married, never had children. She'd built a successful pharmaceutical company in the 70s and sold it in the 90s. But she'd lived simply, in the same modest brownstone in Boston where she'd always lived. Mrs. Morrison? Are you still there? Yes, I'm here. Are you certain? Quite certain. The will is very clear. She's left specific instructions that the inheritance is to be held in a trust in your name only, not marital property, your name exclusively. That detail would save my life, though I didn't know it yet. I'd been married to David Morrison for 38 years. We'd met in college. He was the ambitious business student. I was studying literature with dreams of becoming a writer. Those dreams had died slowly. One diaper change at a time, one PTA meeting, one load of laundry. I'd put my dreams away to support his career, to raise our 2 children, James and Sophie. David had built a successful consulting firm, Morrison and Associates. We had a beautiful home in Greenwich, Connecticut. We had everything. Everything except honesty. My first instinct was to tell David immediately. We'd always shared everything, hadn't we? Every decision, every piece of news, every triumph and tragedy. That's what marriage meant. But something made me pause. Maybe it was the way he'd been lately distant, always on his phone, working late more nights than not. Maybe it was the way he'd snapped at me last week when I'd asked about the credit card statement that showed charges from a hotel in Manhattan, a hotel I'd never been to. Business expenses, Patricia, he'd said, his voice sharp. You wouldn't understand. Maybe it was Aunt Margaret's voice in my head. She'd pulled me aside at Christmas, 2 months before she died. Patty, she'd said she was the only one who still called me that promised me something. Never let anyone make you feel like you're less than you are. Not even David. I'd laughed it off then. David loves me, Aunt Margaret. She'd looked at me with those penetrating blue eyes. I'm sure he does, dear, but love and respect are 2 different things. So I called the lawyer back. I'd like to keep this confidential for now, I said. Is that possible? Of course, Mrs. Morrison. The trust is ironclad. No one can access it but you. I decided I'd tell David that evening. We'd celebrate. Maybe this money would be the fresh start we needed. We could travel like we'd always talked about. I could finally write that novel. David could slow down at work. I made his favorite dinner pot roast with roasted vegetables, the recipe I'd perfected over decades. I put on the dress he'd once said he loved, though I couldn't remember the last time he'd noticed what I wore. I set the table with our wedding china, lit candles. At 7 o'clock, I texted him, "Dinner's ready. Something important to tell you." At 7:30, he texted back, "Meeting running late. Don't wait up." At 8, I ate alone. At 9, I scraped his dinner into the trash and went to bed. This had become our normal. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The next morning, I decided to surprise him at his office. I'd bring lunch, those Italian sandwiches from the deli he loved. We'd eat together like we used to when we were young, and I'd tell him about the inheritance then. Morrison and Associates occupied the entire 14th floor of a sleek building in Stamford. I'd been there dozens of times over the years, Christmas parties, company events. David's assistant, Caroline, had been with him for 7 years. She was efficient, professional, always friendly to me. But when I stepped off the elevator that day, Caroline wasn't at her desk. The reception area was empty. I could hear voices coming from David's office. His door was slightly ajar. I recognized his laugh. That deep, genuine laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in years. And then I heard another voice. A woman's voice, younger than mine, warm and intimate. "David, we can't keep doing this," she said. I know. Just a few more months. Once James finishes law school, once Sophie's wedding is over. Then I'll tell her. I promise." My heart stopped. "You've been saying that for 3 years," the woman said. There was frustration in her voice, but also affection. "I love you, but I can't keep being the secret." "I love you too, Caroline. You know I do." "Patricia. She's been my wife for so long. I just need to do this the right way. She's given up everything for me, for our family. I owe her that much. I should have left. I should have turned around, gone home, processed what I was hearing. Instead, I pushed the door open. David was behind his desk. Caroline was perched on the edge of it, her hand on his shoulder. They jumped apart like teenagers caught by parents. "Patricia?" David's face went white. This isn't... How long?" My voice sounded calm, which surprised me. Inside, I was shattering into 1,000 pieces. Caroline grabbed her blazer from the chair. "I should go." "No." I looked at her directly for the first time. She was beautiful, maybe 45, polished, professional. "Stay. I want to know." "How long?" "Patricia, let's talk about this at home." "How long, David?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was stressed. 3 years. 3 years. While I'd been planning Sophie's wedding. While James had been struggling through his first year of law school. While I'd been taking care of David's mother when she had her stroke. "I love her, Patricia." David's voice was quiet. "I didn't mean for it to happen, but Caroline and we have things in common. We talk about work, about ideas. And I'm just the woman who makes your pot roast." The words came out bitter. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it sounded wrong, broken. "You want to talk about fair? I gave up my career for you. I raised your children. I made your home. I supported every dream you ever had. And you've been planning to leave me? For 3 years, you've been lying to me? I never wanted to hurt you. Just a few more months, right? Once Sophie's wedding is over?" I looked at him, this man I'd loved for 40 years, and saw a stranger. "Were you planning to tell me before or after we paid for her wedding?" "Before or after I'd finished organizing every detail of the reception. Maybe you thought you'd wait until after the honeymoon, save yourself the embarrassment of canceling?" Caroline had tears running down her face. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm so sorry. I never meant." "You meant exactly what happened." I turned to her. "You're not stupid, Caroline. You knew he was married. You knew he had a family. You chose this." I walked out of that office with my head high, even though my legs were shaking. I made it to my car before I started crying. For 2 days, I didn't answer David's calls. I stayed in the guest room when he came home. I couldn't look at him without seeing him with her, hearing his voice saying he loved her. Sophie called on the 3rd day. "Mom, Dad said you two had a fight. Is everything okay? How do you tell your daughter that her father, who she idolizes, has been cheating for 3 years? How do you destroy her image of family right before her wedding?" "We're working through some things, sweetheart," I said. James was more direct when he called an hour later. Dad told me about Caroline. I sat down. "He did?" he said. "He said he loves her, Mom. He said you two have grown apart, that you want different things now. He said it's been over between you for years, you just didn't want to admit it." My son's words felt like knives. "Is that what he said? I mean, haven't you noticed? You two barely talk anymore. You're like roommates. Maybe this is for the best. Dad seems happy when he talks about her." I hung up the phone and cried for an hour. My son thought I should be grateful to be discarded. My husband was rewriting our history to make himself the victim. And I had $42 million that could change everything. I called Aunt Margaret's lawyer the next morning. "I need to understand the trust completely," I said. "David can't access any of it in a divorce?" "Correct. It's a separate property trust established before the inheritance became marital knowledge. Connecticut law is very clear on this. It's entirely yours. And if I wanted to hire investigators to look into David's financial activities?" There was a pause. May I ask why? He's been having an affair for 3 years, with his assistant, who he pays with company money. I want to know what else he's been hiding. I can recommend an excellent forensic accountant and a divorce attorney. Please do. I hired both. The divorce attorney, Rebecca Chen, was a shark. The forensic accountant, Marcus Williams, was thorough. What they found made the affair look almost innocent. David's company, Morrison and Associates, was successful. But not as successful as it should have been. For the past 5 years, David had been funneling money into a separate account, almost $2 million. He's been preparing for this, Rebecca explained, building a nest egg separate from marital assets. The fact that he's been doing it for 5 years suggests the affair might have been going on longer than 3 years, or he's been planning to leave for a while. But there was more. Marcus discovered that David had been billing clients for hours that Caroline had worked, then paying her separately, off the books, in cash. It was fraud. Small scale compared to what some people did, but fraud nonetheless. He could face criminal charges, Marcus said carefully. If the clients find out they've been overcharged and the work was done by someone unqualified to bill at his rate. I sat in Rebecca's office, looking at spreadsheets and bank statements. 38 years of marriage, reduced to numbers on paper. What do you want to do, Patricia? Rebecca asked. I thought about David's voice, telling Caroline he'd wait until after Sophie's wedding. I thought about James, telling me Dad seemed happy with her. I thought about 38 years of putting myself last. I want justice, I said. Sophie's wedding was in 6 weeks. Beautiful Sophie, my baby girl, who'd been planning this day since she was 7 years old. I couldn't destroy that for her. So I played the role I'd been playing for 38 years, the devoted wife. I smiled at the rehearsal dinner. I stood next to David in the receiving line, accepted condolences about our rough patch from well-meaning relatives who thought we just argued about money or vacation plans. Caroline wasn't invited, of course, but I saw David check his phone constantly, texting her updates probably, telling her how hard this was for him. Poor David. The wedding was beautiful. Sophie looked radiant. I cried during the ceremony, and everyone assumed they were happy tears. They were, partially. My daughter was starting her life, but they were also tears for the end of mine. At the reception, during the mother-son dance with James, I whispered in his ear, "Your father has been stealing from his clients." He pulled back, looking at me. What? I have proof. I've hired lawyers. After today, everything changes. Mom, you can't. It's Sophie's wedding. I know. That's why I waited. But tomorrow, your father is going to be served with divorce papers. And the day after that, I'm sending evidence of his fraud to his 3 biggest clients. James looked pale. Why are you doing this? Because he thought I'd just disappear quietly. Because he thought I'd be grateful for whatever he decided to give me. Because he underestimated me. You're going to destroy him. No, sweetheart. He destroyed himself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. The papers were served on Monday morning. David called me 23 times. I didn't answer. On Tuesday, I sent the evidence to his clients. By Wednesday, Morrison and Associates had lost 2 of their biggest accounts. By Friday, the Connecticut Bar Association had opened an investigation. David showed up at the house on Saturday morning. I'd changed the locks. Patricia, please. We need to talk. I spoke through the closed door. My lawyer will be in touch. You're destroying my career. Those clients, I built those relationships over decades. You defrauded those clients over years. Caroline did the work. She's qualified. She's not licensed to bill at your rate. You know that. You did it anyway because you were funneling money to leave me. Silence. I want to come home, he said finally. This is my home. You chose Caroline. Go home to her. Patricia, I made a mistake. I love you. We can work through this. You love me? I almost laughed. You planned to leave me for 3 years. You stole from your business to fund your new life. You turned our son against me. You made me feel like I was crazy for noticing the distance between us. That's not love, David. That's contempt. I gave you everything. This house, this life. I gave you everything, I said quietly. My dreams, my career, my youth. I made your home, raised your children, supported your ambitions. and you gave me scraps of attention when it was convenient. I heard him sit down on the porch steps. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. What do you want? I want the divorce to be final before you face criminal charges. I want you to accept my terms, 50% of all marital assets, the house, and my retirement account made whole for all the years I didn't work. Patricia, that's almost everything. Not quite. You'll have your separate account, the $2 million you were hiding. That should be enough to start over with Caroline. More silence. If I agree. You won't pursue criminal charges? I'm not pursuing them. Your clients are. But I won't provide additional testimony beyond what I've already given. How they proceed is up to them. The divorce took 4 months. David fought initially, hired an expensive lawyer, tried to argue that I'd hidden my inheritance. But Rebecca was brilliant, and the prenuptial agreement Aunt Margaret's lawyer had built into the trust was ironclad. In the end, David took the settlement. He had no choice. 2 of his clients had filed civil suits, and the Bar Association was moving toward suspension of his license. The last time I saw him was at the final hearing. He looked older, tired. Caroline wasn't with him. She left, he said, as we waited for the judge. When the money problems started, she said she needed time to think. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt nothing. Patricia, he said. For what it's worth, I am sorry. You deserved better. Yes, I said. I did. The judge signed the papers. After 38 years, I was free. Sophie didn't speak to me for 2 months. She thought I'd ruined her father's life, destroyed the family, been vindictive and cruel. James was more measured but distant. I'd embarrassed him, made things difficult at his law firm where everyone knew the Morrison name. It was the hardest part. Harder than discovering the affair, harder than the divorce. My children thought I was the villain in this story. But 3 months after the divorce was final, Sophie called. Mom, can we talk? She came to the house, my house now, redecorated top to bottom, no trace of David left except in some family photos I'd kept for the kids. Dad moved in with someone new, Sophie said. Her name is Jennifer. She's 32. He introduced us last week. I waited. She's younger than me, Mom. And he was. He was the same with her as he was with Caroline. Attentive, charming, like she was the only person in the world. And I realized, when's the last time I saw him look at you like that? I took my daughter's hand. I went through some old photos, Sophie continued, tears streaming down her face. From when we were kids. And Mom, you're in the background of all of them, making sure we had what we needed, organizing everything, holding the family together. And Dad was just there for the good parts, the vacations, the graduations. But you were there for everything. Sophie, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I thought you were being cruel to Dad, but you were just finally standing up for yourself. We cried together that afternoon, and slowly, painfully, my relationship with my daughter began to heal. James took longer. It wasn't until David's suspension from the Bar Association was finalized that he called. I looked into what happened with Dad's clients, he said. The billing fraud? Mom, I'm an attorney now. What he did? It's not a gray area. It's clear-cut fraud. I know. You could have told me. Before the wedding, before everything, you could have explained. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was trying to turn you against your father? Silence. Then, quietly, I would have thought you were jealous, that you couldn't handle him being happy. I know, sweetheart. That's why I waited. I needed you to see it yourself. He called me yesterday, asked me for money, said Jennifer left him when she found out about his legal problems. He said I owed him because he paid for my law school. What did you say? I said no. And then he said you'd poisoned me against him, that you'd turned into a bitter, vindictive woman. Maybe I have, I said. But I'm also free. It's been a year since the divorce was finalized. I'm 63 years old, and I feel like I'm finally living my life. I used part of Aunt Margaret's inheritance to establish a writing retreat for women over 50 who want to pursue creative dreams they'd set aside. It's called the Margaret Thompson Center for Second Chances. We have our first cohort of 20 women. Their stories are beautiful, heartbreaking, inspiring. I started writing again. Not the great American novel I dreamed of in college, but something better, a memoir about finding yourself after losing yourself in marriage. My agent thinks it could be published next year. I travel. I went to Italy last month, wandered through Florence alone, ate gelato for dinner, and didn't apologize to anyone for it. I'm planning a trip to Japan in the spring. Sophie and I have dinner every Tuesday. James came to visit last month with his girlfriend, and we talked for hours about everything: his work, his life, my life. He asked me if I was happy. I am, I said. And I meant it. I saw David once, a few months ago. I was having coffee at a cafe in Westport, and he walked in. He was alone, looked older than his 65 years. He saw me, but didn't approach. I could have felt triumph, revenge. Satisfaction at seeing him brought low. Instead, I felt only a distant sadness for time wasted. For years spent making myself smaller to make him feel bigger. For dreams deferred and then forgotten. But also gratitude. To Aunt Margaret, who'd known somehow that I'd need that money, that independence. To Rebecca and Marcus, who'd fought for me when I was learning to fight for myself. To Sophie and James, who'd eventually chosen to see the truth. And to myself, for finally, after 63 years, putting myself first. I finished my coffee and left. David stayed where he was, a stranger I used to know. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote. The words came easily now. They always do when you're finally telling the truth. I never thought a phone call from my sister would change everything. I typed. But maybe that's the point. We never know which moment will be the one that sets us free. We just have to be brave enough to recognize it when it comes. I saved the document and closed my laptop. Tomorrow, I'd write more. Tomorrow, there would be new words, new stories, a new life unfolding. But tonight, I was content. After 38 years of living for someone else, I was finally, gloriously, completely myself. And that was worth more than $42 million. Though the $42 million certainly helped.